Welcome to Sacred Right, the podcast where we explore holistic living, the wisdom of ancestral traditions, and the path to deepening our connection with ourselves, one another, and the earth. Together, we will embrace wellness in all its forms and rediscover the sacred callings that guide us home. I'm your host, Amber Young, and today we're diving into the ancient art of Ayurvedic cleansing with the incredible Sarah Kruse, an Ayurvedic practitioner with decades of experience in natural healing. As we transition into spring, our bodies are naturally seeking renewal. But how do we align with this seasonal shift? In this episode, Sarah shares the wisdom of Ayurveda, guiding us through the purpose of seasonal detoxification, the signs that indicate it's time for a cleanse, and how to gently support our body's natural rhythms. We'll explore why spring is the ideal time for cleansing in Ayurveda, the connection between digestion, toxins, and overall health, nourishing foods and herbs to support gentle detoxification, how to balance cleansing with daily life without depletion, and simple Ayurvedic practices to help bring harmony to the body and mind. Whether you're new to Ayurveda or looking to deepen your seasonal self-care rituals, this episode is filled with practical insights to help you feel lighter, clearer, and more vibrant as we step into the energy of spring. Let's get started. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to Sacred Right Podcast. I'm so excited to be interviewing you today about Ayurvedic practices in the spring. You're just such a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. I took one of your classes, as you know, we were talking about at the Herbal Fair this last summer, and I felt like I gained so much knowledge and was inspiration just from a couple-hour conversation hearing you speak about what you know. So I'm excited to dive in today. And to start, I would love to hear about your journey into Ayurvedic practices and just the world of Ayurveda, and just what inspired you to embrace this path. And for any listeners who are new to Ayurveda, how would you describe it?
Oh, thank you so much, Amber, and for the opportunity to share with everyone about my biggest passion, Ayurvedic medicine. I've been practicing for about 25 years, and I feel just so blessed to have come across this path when I was about 19 years old. My primary teacher of Ayurveda is Dr. Vasant Lad. And just to explain, Ayurveda is the medical system from India. So it's known as the science of life or science of longevity. It's the sister science of yoga. They developed side by side in ancient India more than 5,000 years ago. And Ayurveda is a complete system of medicine that looks at each person as an individual. So when I discovered Ayurveda, all the light bulbs went off and I was like, okay, this is my path. I definitely want to pursue this. So just to backtrack a little bit again, when I was 19, I had moved to Seattle from Oregon and was exploring a path of study. I knew I wanted to pursue natural medicine. I didn't know what form. I was exploring naturopathic medicine, herbalism, homeopathic medicine. And I was interested in all of those traditions, but it wasn't quite a big yes at that time. And I was having dinner one night at an Indian restaurant and saw a flyer on the wall for an Ayurvedic medicine, like an intro to Ayurveda talk. So I went to that, and the teacher, Dr. George, illuminated so much about this healing science, and everything he shared completely resonated with me. And at that moment, I'm like, okay, something is there. A spark has been lit. I need to pursue this. So I went and sat with him multiple times, and he shared more about Ayurveda. And I said, well, do I need to go to India to study Ayurveda? He said, no, don't go to India yet. Go to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and study with Dr. Vasant Lad. And I decided to do that. So sight unseen, moved to Albuquerque and began my studies of Ayurveda. And since then, Dr. Lad has been my primary teacher, and he's the founder of the Ayurvedic Institute. They were based in Albuquerque for many years, and now they're located in Asheville, North Carolina. So there's a lot more I could share about him, but mostly that I'm just so grateful that he has brought Ayurveda to the West and has been my teacher.
That's such a beautiful way to get into it. And I love that it is very like kind of classic. Like you went to an Indian restaurant, you saw a flyer and you felt inspired and you just felt the calling. I feel like I'm always checking out flyers up posted at the co-op or posted at the yoga studio and trying to find things that spark intrigue and interest for me. So I just love that you followed the calling when you saw something. You're like, hey, I'm interested. And then you just took the dive in sight unseen, like you said, and went to Albuquerque as a young person. That's a total drastic change of environment completely coming from Oregon and Washington and then going to the desert. So that's pretty a unique and amazing story. So just hats off to you for following your desires and dreams. Yeah, I'm curious too. So you were talking about Ayurvedic medicine just being really rooted in individuals' constitutions in ways. Like I know a little bit about the doshas, so Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and that we have a combination of that within each person, right? And sometimes there's imbalances or like maybe overactivity. Can you help people understand how we can achieve balance with our doshas and maybe a little bit about what those are?
Yeah, so Ayurveda is also a very spiritual science. It's a whole and complete medical science, but also a spiritual science. So many teachers within the Vedic tradition say, or they acknowledge that the purpose of life is to know thyself, to really know ourselves. And Ayurveda is a paradigm of healing that helps us understand and know ourselves better. So by knowing our true nature, our constitution, and our tendencies, we can go about making the right choices to keep ourselves in balance with the environment, with the season, with our stage of life. So I just love that so much. As we gain more understanding about our constitution, we have less judgment about ourselves, less judgment about others. And then we can just intuitively and, with that awareness, be able to make choices about the right food, the right practices, the right herbs to choose for our constitution. So Ayurveda looks at each person as a unique individual, and that stems from the five elements. So we first look at the five elements, which are space, air, fire, water, and earth. So we acknowledge that the five elements are in nature and they're also within our bodies. So we all have all five elements within us. And then those elements further break down into what's known as the three doshas. The three constitutional types are these three great energies. And again, just like we have the five elements within us in different proportions, we have all three doshas, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, within us in different proportions. So we understand our constitution based upon what's known as prakriti, your birth constitution, what your combination of elements and doshas is at birth is your prakriti. This never changes. For example, if someone knows that they're primarily Pitta and Vata secondary in their constitution, this never changes. But then there's something called Vikruti, which is the current state of imbalance. This is always changing. This is the changeable part of us. So say the person is born Pitta Vata, but they've had a life of a lot of activity and overwhelm on the go, and Vata has been elevated for some time. Then we would acknowledge that Vata is increased or imbalanced. We would aim to bring Vata back down to its natural state or rebalance it with the Prakriti. So we consider both of these aspects of the constitution, and that can be felt or seen through the pulse. We include pulse analysis or pulse diagnosis in Ayurveda in an in-person consultation with a practitioner or doctor. So like in Chinese medicine, the pulse reveals a lot about the person. And so that's one way to start understanding your constitution is to sit with an experienced practitioner, have them feel your pulse. Another way to start thinking about or learning about your constitution is there are a lot of online dosha quizzes you can take, which are kind of fun and pretty helpful in starting to give you a sense about your Ayurvedic constitution, what dosha may be predominant There are a lot of quizzes out there. Honestly, the one on banyanbotanicals.com is really comprehensive, and it gives you a sense about your prakriti and your vikriti, gives you a few suggestions about herbs and practices even. So there's a lot more I could say about that, but I'll give you a chance to say something too, Amber.
Yeah, that's amazing. So last night I actually went on Banyan Botanicals and I did this years ago and I just wanted to see, is it the same? But I went on last night and I took my dosha test and it said Pitta Vata and that I had Vata imbalances, which feels very true for me. I wanted to know a little bit more about Pitta. Of course, I want to see like an amazing practitioner like you to actually get more into it because I know these online tests, there was just, a handful of questions, and I'm sure they're getting to some of the things, but also there would be obvious gaps when taking online quizzes to see what your constitution was. But it did feel very true that I have some vata imbalances because I have very like dry skin during the change of the seasons. I really have to lather up with the herbal body oils and the tallow and yeah, so the change of seasons can be hard for me. And my personality is very kind of airy fairy. So I was like, okay, maybe this does ring true. And yeah, I just want to see how I can find balance. And speaking of finding balance, like we're in the spring. I learned from your talk that spring is the best time to detox in Ayurvedic practices. And Ayurveda really emphasizes seasonal cleansing. And so, why is spring considered this ideal time for detoxification?
Yes, great question. So spring is such a good time for the body to cleanse and release its excesses because we are a reflection of nature. So, what's happening outside in nature is impacting what's happening in our bodies. So, throughout the winter, there's been this accumulation outside. Maybe there's been snow accumulating in the mountains and the cold qualities and building qualities, and also in our bodies. Maybe we've been eating heavier foods through the winter. We've been building, maybe we've gained a little bit of weight, or there's been some toxic accumulation. And then spring comes, and what happens in nature is the snow starts melting off the mountains. And then our bodies naturally want to detoxify and release excesses or heaviness from winter. And what nature provides at that time of the year are bitter herbs. And oftentimes, what's growing in our local environment at any season is the medicine we need at that time of the year. So, bitter herbs such as dandelion leaf, dandelion root, burdock, nettles, Oregon grapefruit, these kind of bitter herbs and bitter greens support our body in cleansing and detoxifying. So, this supports Kapha dosha, which is more water and earth. And it also supports Pitta dosha, the fire and the water. Of course, Vata benefits as well, but these bitter herbs especially work on the liver and the blood and the Kapha and the Pitta at this time of the year.
So amazing. That's the thing I really just love about herbal medicine is the herbs will grow at the time, like the earth provides, right? And the herbs will grow when humans most need that medicine. And so if you just like, take a walk and see what's growing, like I have like the cleavers are growing. I know cleavers are really great for detoxification during this time. And I love using nettle medicine so much. So this is just a great time for all those things you named. I'm like, yay, all my friends, burdock, dandelion. It's such a fun time. And I love really just thinking cyclically, like let's take the medicines that the earth is providing in the environment that it's providing, right? Like, because of course, in the Pacific Northwest, where we live, the medicines that grow here are different than another environment. So it makes the most sense to wherever you're living and residing to really connect with that medicine. Is how I feel. So very cool. And what are like some, for people curious with, okay, maybe they're interested, like myself, in doing some sort of Ayurvedic spring detox at home? What are some simple and gentle ways to begin doing that?
Yeah, so I like to think about detoxification in a few different ways. We can think about it as cleansing seasonally, which is what we're kind of focusing on now. But I also want to point out that we don't have to wait for a seasonal cleanse to keep up with our detoxification practices. So in Ayurveda, we start learning tools to kind of offset the impact of toxins on a daily basis. And so I love thinking about that. And then, of course, thinking about the seasonal cleanse as well. So, like things we can do daily to cleanse our body and to prevent toxins from building up. One simple thing is drinking hot water. So, just drinking hot water throughout the day kind of keeps things clear. It hydrates more effectively. It keeps our digestive fire, our agni, stronger, and it just kind of melts toxins from the body. So, hot water, hot herbal teas, definitely not cold or iced beverages, which can constrict and slow down digestion. That's a big thing in Ayurveda. No ice water. Another way we can cleanse our bodies daily is through breathing deeply. So, pranayama, breathwork practices, they say that even when someone is losing weight, say they've lost 10 pounds, that 8 pounds of that leaves the body through the breath. So, a lot of our excesses and our toxins leave through the breath. This is why breathing exercises are so important. Or when we're exercising, that we're walking briskly, or if we're jogging or riding our bike or doing yoga, that we're breathing in a strong way to allow that life force, that prana, to move through our bodies and help us detoxify.
I love that because it's so simple, right? We all take in our breath. And this is something, so I work with like 9 and 10-year-old children. And my students, I always tell them, like, so we practice deep breathing exercises all the time. And I always tell them, like, this is your body's natural way to detox. The power of your breath is just incredible. And I saw some statistic, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, but this is what I do share with the students is that 70% of your toxins that build up can come out through your breath. And so that kind of aligns with what you're sharing. So I'm feeling really excited about just continuing to embed that wisdom within myself and remind myself as well to take these deep, full breaths to really cleanse and clear the body. That's what, air is so good at doing that.
I love that you're helping to teach these children at a young age these simple practices and how they can support their bodies throughout their lives.
Yeah, it's definitely an honor to do so. And so you're saying like detox on a regular basis. I love the simplicity of having some hot water. Would you suggest adding like lemon to it or anything to it? Or just, of course, you talked about having teas. So that would be adding something to your hot water or your warm water. But yeah, what do you think about lemon or anything else?
Yeah, I think, at the very least, warm water or hot water first thing in the morning. I do recommend to a lot of my clients to start the day with lemon water. So maybe some plain water first, and then a glass of lemon water with a pinch of salt and maybe a little honey. And if someone has really high pitta or a lot of acid or heat in their body, they could use lime. Lime is not quite as heating as lemon. It's a little more cooling. Or if the citrus itself is too aggravating for someone's acid or pitta, they could leave out the citrus and just do the hot water. But the idea is to start the day with water, and people who are accustomed to drinking coffee or black tea to have a bowel movement, for example, may find that they don't need that if they're drinking the lemon water or the hot water. Instead, it gets things going in the same kind of way. So yeah, I really love that practice.
That's so great. And yeah, for us at our home, we really like to highlight just detoxification in general. Like we have a sauna at our home, so we sauna a lot to detox the body. And then I use like facial gua sha or facial massage to help move the lymph and detox the body. Is that something that you find is in Ayurvedic medicine as well?
Not specifically gua sha. I do really appreciate that practice, but the self abhyanga, giving yourself massage, is recommended. And there's also something called garshana, which includes dry, like they're gloves, they're silk gloves, raw silk gloves. And you rub the body with these silk gloves to invigorate the lymphatic system. And then after the garshana, you can apply the warm oil to your body before showering. So this is a daily kind of practice that Ayurveda suggests for a lot of people. So maybe the Garshana, if there's excess Kapha or stagnation in the body, getting the lymph moving is really helpful, or even skin brushes, the dry skin brushes can be helpful. And then following with the Abhyanga. Beautiful practice.
Oh, yeah. So, how long would you suggest to the warm oil on your body? Like, how long would you suggest to let it sit?
Yeah, so the massage itself can really only be about 5 minutes. It doesn't need to be a long process. So 5 minutes for the massage. If you have time to leave it on and your house is warm and you won't get cold, sometimes what I recommend is apply the oil and then maybe wear an Abhyanga sarong and, walk around your house, make your breakfast, do a few things in your kitchen, and then go have your shower or your bath if you have that kind of time. Or maybe you'll have the luxury of time on the weekend and you can do it that way. Otherwise, simply just applying the oil and then getting right into the shower or bath is still quite fine because the hot water from the shower helps push the oils deeper into the skin. And that supports detoxification and nourishment and calming of the nerve endings. And so some people will say, well, what about if I put the oil on after the shower? That's sometimes okay, especially if someone's skin is super dry, like really high Vata dry skin. But I find it's actually more effective to put it on before. The main thing is just to watch that you don't slip in the shower because you're pretty oily at that point.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to doing that. I tend to put my oils on after the shower. So now I'm inspired to try doing it beforehand. So thank you for that. You talked a bit about, or just a little bit about Agni, that digestive fire. And I'm just curious, like, what role does Agni play in detoxification and how can we strengthen it during this time?
Yes, exactly. So Agni is one of the primary indicators of health or lack of health. And Agni is literally your digestive fire, your ability to digest your food, your experiences, what's coming in through your senses. There's sensory Agni, but primarily we think about digestive fire. And so if there's low Agni, then what shows up is coating on the tongue. You might have white or yellow coating on the tongue. And that is an indication that your fire is low and some kind of detoxification would be helpful. Even just drinking hot water will help with that. And there are a lot of ways we can boost our Agni. So one of my favorites is just chewing on a slice of ginger. You can literally just cut a slice of fresh ginger and even put a little lime and salt on it. And just chew that up before your meal to stimulate gastric juices and natural enzymes and prepare you for your meal. So maintaining a strong Agni is a really important part of Ayurveda in terms of healthy digestion, metabolism, preventing toxins from accumulating. There are things that can diminish Agni, though. So if we've had a lot of stress or challenging emotions, that can reduce Agni. Maybe we've noticed if we're feeling overwhelmed, we're just not hungry, or if we're on a big work project or we're, stressed, our appetite is going to be lower. And so we need to manage our stress in that case. Or if we've had kind of a sedentary period of life, our Agni can be low. So exercise and movement or breath work are very helpful at getting the fire going again. And so we need to have a strong Agni to properly detoxify the body or go through any kind of a cleanse. If our Agni is really weak, getting going in a cleanse can be sluggish. So it's like you said, it's important to consider Agni before proceeding with any kind of cleanse.
That's great to know. So I do so for that, our tongue, I use a tongue scraper, a copper tongue scraper. That is an Ayurvedic practice as well, right? To help with Agni and detoxing the body. So like I wake up in the morning and I might scrape my tongue like 5 times. Does that feel like that's a proper use of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Using a tongue scraper, it's good to point out, I think, that it's not just to keep the coating off the tongue and keep the mouth fresh, which it will do that, but our tongue has different pressure points that correspond to abdominal or digestive organs. For example, when we scrape the tongue, we're giving a gentle massage to the pressure points or the meridians that connect to the liver, the large intestine, the stomach, the colon, the lungs, all the major organs get this trigger to release toxins. So scraping the tongue specifically helps to detoxify the body.
I love it. So cool. So many simple practices that can really easily be implemented into somebody's daily life that doesn't take a long time. Like you said, even with the body massage, you could do it for 5 minutes right before you take a shower, which most of us do, every day or every couple days. Like in motherhood, maybe I'll skip a few days, but yeah, and then scraping the tongue when you wake up and maybe implementing that into your teeth brushing ritual. And I love these just simple and practical ways to help support the body and help detox the body. There's so much in our environment that is causing like toxic overload, and so yeah, I feel like we as humans need to do everything we can to support ourselves with detoxing, because chronic disease is just at an all-time high right now. And like you said, for me too, I always gain a little weight in the winter. I feel like it's a time for those really hearty foods, and we really try to eat seasonally at our home. So we eat a lot of soups, and it's like potatoes and carrots, these root vegetables. And, we buy a whole cow and we have a lot of freezer space. And so we just pull out meat and incorporate that into our meal and kind of eat like that all winter long. And I love making bread, sourdough breads. And so I feel like in the winter, I always gain some weight. And then I try to be really like, gentle on myself about that, because I feel like it's really matching the seasons. I feel like every time spring comes, it just kind of melts away with these other practices. And then I kind of go back into my typical weight range. So I feel like I always maybe gain an extra 5 pounds or so. Do you find that your clients kind of gain during this time up where we live?
Yes, naturally, yes. During winter, the body will accumulate a few more pounds as a form of protection, insulation, warmth, right? But then come spring, these bitter foods and practices support the body in naturally releasing that. So I see that to be true for a lot of my clients up until about mid 40s or 50s, where maybe in our 20s, 30s, early 40s, that 5 to 10 pound weight gain over winter would just kind of drop off in spring and summer. Maybe by midlife, it doesn't drop off as easily. So, this is just something I've noticed with my clients, that it takes a little bit of extra effort or awareness with practices and how we eat to not accumulate and have that become toxic for our body, but to have it, those accumulations release in a more natural way. And so this is where the spring cleanse really comes in. Like a structured spring cleanse will help those excesses come off in a natural way, where we also don't have judgment about ourselves, but just acknowledging that we are part of, this natural rhythm. So we've talked about a few ways of cleansing and detoxing the body, but in Ayurveda, we think about a home cleanse or even a panchakarma. So in Ayurveda, the traditional cleansing program is called panchakarma, which means 5 cleansing actions. And in traditional Ayurveda, the way it's practiced in India, a panchakarma program can be 7 to 21 days, where a person will go to an Ayurvedic retreat center or an Ayurvedic hospital and systematically prepare the body and detoxify the toxins from the body in a specific way. And so we can even do a version of this here. We can go and receive panchakarma at a retreat center, or we can do a kind of guided spring cleanse or a fall cleanse for our bodies, where we're eating a simple food such as khichdi and drinking certain kinds of teas and taking herbs and giving ourselves oil massage and a hot shower or sauna. So we can actually embark upon a seasonal cleanse ourselves at home and get great benefit. Have you done anything like this, Amber?
No, but I really want to this season. This is like my season to do like a cleanse. So I would love to just hear those 5 cleansing practices. I'm hearing like the oil massage and these things that are already I'm incorporating. I do love khichdi. We on occasion will have that for a couple days in a row, dependent like the time of year or dependent what we're cleansing for. But how would you be eating the khichdi for the 7 to 21 days, or what would a panchakarma look like at home?
Yeah, a home panchakarma would be probably 5 to 7 days. Honestly, 21 days in a retreat center is more if someone is trying to heal a chronic disease or prevent that from setting into their system. It can be very, very effective. But at home, 5 to 7 days or even 10 days, one will eat khichdi, which is a one pot meal of lentils and rice, typically with spices and maybe some vegetables in that one pot or vegetables on the side. So you can eat khichdi or something similar to that for the whole, say, 5 to 10 days. Maybe one day it's the one pot, mung bean, rice, spices, maybe some sweet potato. And then the next day it's a red lentil soup and some quinoa and some steamed beets and greens, something like that. So the idea is that it's the same kinds of foods, and you can maybe prepare them a little differently during the panchakarma for variety. And so you don't get kind of restless or bored, but that you have some different flavors or different textures, even.
I love that. I would love the, varying textures and flavors just because after maybe 7 days of consuming something, you'd be like, all right, let's kind of switch it up. Is there any website or anything that you know of that has some Ayurvedic spring Pashakarma recipes?
I think Banyan Botanicals probably has some of those recipes. They have a lot of the products and herbs and information, available about Ayurvedic cleanses. They have even cleanse kits available where you have all your khichdi supplies and some herbs all in one kit. So that's available. I do guide people through a home spring cleanse. And also I do this in the fall for my clients where it's kind of a community event where people come together in person or on Zoom and we prepare everybody for their cleanse, check in midweek, and then check in at the end about now we've completed the cleanse, how to go forward. And so in that kind of a structured cleanse, I provide all the recipes that they need. And a lot of my colleagues, Ayurvedic practitioners and doctors, also provide some kind of a spring cleanse. So you can really get these resources from your local Ayurvedic doctor or practitioner, or even from banyanbotanicals.com. They have quite a few recipes on their website.
Amazing. And so have you started that process of guiding your clients through this community spring cleanse?
I haven't started that yet. We're having our intro class on April 26th. The cleanse itself is May 5th through the 14th, 2025. We're here.
Awesome. So this will come out, and if people feel called, they can come join. That's perfect.
Yeah, yeah. And they can join in person. I'm located on Bainbridge Island, and I'll be directing the cleanse out of the Dialu Center. So the cleanse registration information is on dialucenter.com's site, or you can join virtually and still get great benefit.
Amazing. So people could live afar and still come and join this community.
Yes, and wherever you live, there are ways you can customize or modify some of the supplies. Like, say you're having a hard time finding triphala or some kind of herb for your tea, we could substitute with something that you can find that you do have available. So there are ways of modifying some of the ingredients and still having it be very beneficial.
That's amazing. I'm curious too. So you mentioned 5 cleansing practices. So we're talking about what to eat. And then I'm assuming maybe it's the herbal body oiling. What are some of the other 5 cleansing practices?
Yeah, so traditional panchakarma is actually very comprehensive. And the word panchakarma, I think I mentioned, means 5 cleansing actions, although we don't do all 5 cleansing actions for every person. So literally, panchakarma means vamana, therapeutic vomiting, which is beneficial for kapha, which I don't have most of my clients do. So if you're listening, don't worry, you won't need to do this most likely. This is usually done only under supervision in an Ayurvedic hospital or clinic. And then the second is called Virechana, which is therapeutic purgation, where at the right point in the cleanse, the person takes something such as castor oil or some kind of herbal purgative to move the excess doshas or toxins out of the body. And so even during a home guided cleanse, you can take a form of a Virechana substance to release excess bile and pitta and kapha from the body. And that kind of guidance is provided in a structured cleanse. And then basti is herbal and oil enema to cleanse the large intestine. And this is done for some people, especially when there's more Vata dosha that's elevated, will guide people in doing a basti. This is not required for everybody doing a spring cleanse. It's usually done under supervision with a practitioner, where you're set up at home to do it yourself, but you're instructed when to do it, kind of thing. And then the other two karmas within Panchakarma are Rakta Moksha, which is therapeutic bloodletting. So in the Ayurvedic hospitals in India, they actually use leeches to release toxic or stagnant blood. Or if someone has chronic eczema, they'll put leeches on the site of the eczema to release that stagnation. So I don't use leeches in my practice. When I'm guiding someone through a cleanse, I have them take blood cleansing herbs instead. And so there are specific herbs we give for that purpose that are very effective in supporting the skin and the liver and overall Pitta dosha. And then the final and fifth karma is nasya, where you take drops of herbal oils in the nose to clear the sinuses and the head, the respiratory system, and sharpen the mind, actually. So sometimes I will suggest nasya oil drops, and those are available at Banyan as well. So out of the five karmas, I usually have people only do 2 or 3 during a guided home cleanse. And then the adjunct therapies are what we were talking about before, the abhyanga, the self massage, and then some kind of svedana, which is therapeutic sweating. And this can be done with a hot shower or a hot bath. If you have access to a sauna or a steam room, that's amazing. You could do that. So the idea is to oil the body and then to heat the body. So if you have a sauna, you could literally oil your body while you're sitting in your sauna and then break a sweat. And we don't need you to break a huge sweat, but just open the pores and get the channels going is the idea. And then another adjunct therapy when you're receiving panchakarma in a clinical or retreat setting is shirodhara. So shirodhara is the pouring of warm oil on the forehead. And it's very relaxing for the nervous system and the mind. And if you're doing a home cleanse, you may not receive this. Or if you're doing a guided home cleanse at home, but you know an Ayurvedic center is nearby, maybe you'll schedule 1 or 2 shirodharas during your home cleanse to get the benefit for the mind as well.
That is amazing. So, do you know of any Ayurvedic centers here in Washington?
Yeah, there are various Ayurvedic centers available. I'm still surprised there aren't more because I feel like I want every community to have one because of the benefits that it brings to the whole community. So in Seattle, there is a really wonderful center called Veda Health. Veda Health is on Westlake Avenue, and my good friend and colleague Jillian Ehrlich, she and her team provide panchakarma. They also offer just one-off abhyanga or shirodhara. My friend Tammy Hafsala, I can give you a whole list of practitioners that you can include in the show notes if you want, Amber, because there are about 6 practitioners I recommend in Seattle that provide these therapies. And then I'm here on Bainbridge and I offer these therapies as well. And then when I have clients I want to send for a full Panchakarma retreat, what I've been doing lately is sending them to my good friend Annie, and she's located in Southern Washington, just outside of Onalaska. So she will provide spring and fall Panchakarma retreats on her land. They have 65 acres. It's a beautiful setting. And so I'll put my clients in her loving care for 5 to 7 days, and they'll receive all these therapies. All they do is show up, and she nurtures them for that whole week. So it's a beautiful option that we have here in Washington for that.
That's so cool because that's not really far from where I am. I'm in Olympia, Washington. So, on Alaska's like maybe an hour south.
Yes, I think you would love Annie. I definitely want you two to meet.
Yes, I would love to. I can't wait to get that information, and we'll definitely link it in the show notes for those that are local or those that are just interested who might want to come here because maybe where they're living, there might not be access to any of this way of living and being. I know, like, I feel like Washington, we've got these pockets, but like you said, you're surprised there's not more. And maybe that's a call to action for community or for young people to maybe take some of that on and incorporate that more into our communities because we definitely need more healing spaces for sure. just like we talked about, like there's, we're in this chronic disease epidemic. We're in this epidemic of people eating so many processed foods, all the toxins within the food, glyphosate, our soil depletion, water having metals or whatever in the water, fluoride, and just, our toxic overload is just creating an environment of dis-ease. And I feel like, it's not our government or anybody in charge that's going to make the difference. It's just the everyday people who are called to supporting the village, right? Called to supporting the community. So hopefully more young people or more people in general kind of rise into creating more healing spaces all throughout where everybody lives, instead of like, all the fast food restaurants or the things that can cause distraction or, impact our environment. So hopefully my prayer is that that can happen in our lifetime.
Absolutely. That's my prayer as well, that every community has a healing hub to provide resources, information, services for those who need it. And to your point about our environment being so full of toxins, our food supply, our air, our water, it seems like there are more toxins encroaching into these systems all the time. And the way that I think about it is, while that's true, there are ways we can offset that to some degree, but really what there is to do, in the Ayurvedic perspective, is to keep your body functioning optimally, keeping all your channels open, breathing deeply, making sure you're hydrating and moving water through your body, that you're having regular bowel movement and detoxifying regularly, that you're breaking a sweat, which is not always easy in the Northwest throughout winter. Like, how often are we breaking a sweat? So we might take a little more effort to do that. And that we're also releasing our emotional and psychological stress that can accumulate. So Ayurveda acknowledges like the root cause of most disease is coming from the mind and from stress. And if that continues to increase and not be processed and healed, then oftentimes it'll manifest into something. And so keeping all these channels open and clear, including the spiritual and psychological side of ourselves, makes such a difference. And that's something we can be aware of on our own and not wait for an outside source to fix it or to, improve, which who knows when those things are going to happen, but we can manage ourselves. And so in that way, it becomes pretty empowering.
Yes, I love that. I love that connection so much because the mind really does so much for the body. I am someone who it's so rare for me to get sick, and maybe I have something come up once every 5 years or so. And this last season, so maybe just a couple weeks ago, I got sick, and I have not been sick for a very long time. Like I said, maybe 4 or 5 years at this point. And I kind of felt like I was throwing up and, both ends kind of a thing, body chills, body aches. It was very unpleasant and the most sick I can ever recall being in my entire life. It was only 24 hours, thankfully, but I was very humbled. I was like, whoa. And I almost, when I was purging, I was like, okay, this is like a cleanse, right? There's something that needs to be cleansed out of the body. But I always, my husband and I always joke because I feel like I can always manifest wellness in my mind because I don't get sick often. And I've always, for the past 11 years, I've worked in schools with children teaching. I have a classroom full of 30 children that are coughing and sneezing and having all the movements, even sometimes purging up. Like the other day, one of my students had a moment, but I find myself staying well. And I feel like I contribute that to the power of my mind and these practices that I use that help detox and also just, yeah, bring calmness to my nervous system. I don't try to overly stress out myself. And I really try to use practices to calm the mind, or, even singing is something that really helps, and humming, and yeah, devotional practices, sitting at the altar, just things that I feel like have kept me well. So yeah, whenever I feel a little something coming on, I'm like, okay, I am well. My body is this healing vessel. It's a healing temple. But yeah, I was very humbled by this last wave of sickness for me. I guess I was due for it. But do you find because spring is a time where a lot of stuff is coming up, right? Like a lot of the mucus is things are wanting to move out from the body. So we talked the cleansing things we can do to move things out of the body and keep our channels open. But do you find that you notice there's a lot of clients that you have or people that you know that are getting really sick during this time? And do you think that that's related to our bodies wanting to become these clear vessels and matching nature's rhythms?
Yeah, I feel like getting sick isn't always such a bad thing, that needs to be stopped or that we need to be necessarily disappointed about because it's a natural thing that happens. And especially if it happens every few years, it's like the body's natural way of detoxifying and burning something off. And fever serves a purpose. It burns stuff off. Or when we're purging, either way, it's like releasing toxins that maybe we didn't even know were there, but it's an opportunity, yeah, for the body to come back into balance, like just trusting the body that it knows what to do. And so in spring, this is more likely to happen if some of the accumulations we've been building up in our bodies are still there. Then something will kick it in to be released. And whether it's a cold or allergies, oftentimes, because it's the season of Kapha dosha, it's going to affect the respiratory system the most. And so things that impact the respiratory system, what I see is more colds, cough, congestion, the morning kind of mucus, or even sluggish energy, like feeling kind of sluggish in the morning, or even a little bit of depression or melancholy can be there at this time of the year as we're coming out of winter going into spring. And so what's helpful, are all these things that balance kapha, like we've been talking about, like the movement and the exercise and the sauna and the hot teas and cutting back on some of those heavier foods and those more grounding foods we enjoyed in winter, like the soups and the stews and the root vegetables, and all those are like really wonderful that time of the year. And in spring, having our soups be more brothy and more spicy, like, well spiced. So gingers and pepper and garlics and things like that. So more of brothy soups in springtime and more of the fresh included. So, like the nettles, or even making a really beautiful pot of like lentil soup with nettles instead of spinach. You could use nettles as the green. But yeah, just thinking about supporting the kapha dosha and really avoiding sugar. I find that sugar can be the thing that provokes or pushes the kapha over the edge. Someone may have some accumulations in the background kind of lingering, and maybe they won't get expressed, but if they indulge in a treat sometime, maybe that's what tips that kapha over the edge and they wake up with a cold the next day, which can be interesting.
Yeah, I was just watching something on sugar from Paul Chek yesterday, and he was going over the science behind how the immune system is suppressed, even with like 1 teaspoon of sugar, how it's suppressed for a couple hours post having that sugar. And then if you're having a lot of sugar, there was some crazy statistic where like people are having like 38 teaspoons on average a day of sugar, refined sugar. And so you can only imagine how suppressed the immune system would be for all those people who are consuming that much sugar. I'm curious to you, do you find a difference between the natural sugars like the honeys and the maple syrups and that sort of thing versus, of course, the refined sugar we know suppresses the immune system? I know that, the maple syrups and the honeys are better sugar. Would that be something that you feel is okay to incorporate, or do you need to avoid that as well?
Yeah. So if someone's going about a spring cleanse, they can keep those things on the side during the cleanse. But then after the cleanse, incorporating some honey or dates or maple syrup would actually be considered rejuvenating and nourishing. So in Ayurveda, we do acknowledge that the sweet taste has a purpose and that it's strengthening and gives vitality when in combination with the right things. For example, we'll combine dates and almonds in a drink, and it's this sweet, rejuvenating beverage, especially when you add herbs. And so we definitely include sweet in Ayurveda, but the least processed, the better. And again, we have to ask the question, for whom does this person have more kapha dosha? Are they aggravated by sweet? we look at the taste and the doshas, like what taste balance which doshas. Sweet taste actually balances Pitta and Vata. So a person who has Pitta Vata in their constitution, like you, may really find nourishment and balance through eating something like dates or including some honey in your tea, or carbohydrates are also sweet potatoes. These kind of foods are actually balancing. And so Ayurveda, absolutely encourages and includes sweets at the right time for the right constitution.
Yes, I love that because I love dates and I love sweets. So it makes sense that like the Pitta Vata constitution is someone who does appreciate the sweetness. And I think it was your class, it could have been a different class, but in the summer you talked about how sugar can be the vehicle. Is that right? Was that you?
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that? How it could be the vehicle to like retrieve more nutrients, right?
Exactly. So there's a concept in Ayurveda. The word is anupan. Anupan is the vehicle of delivery for the medicine. And so the simplest anupan or vehicle would be hot water. You mix your herbs in hot water and drink it as a tea. Another one is honey. So whenever you combine your herbs with honey, the honey helps deliver to the tissues more effectively. Another that's really effective is ghee or oil. And so whenever you combine herbs with ghee, it'll help deliver those active constituents of the herbs more quickly and more efficiently to the tissues. And so we have like a whole organization, a whole system of these vehicles. But honey and ghee even combined together. Like one recipe I give a lot of clients is to combine honey and ghee and then mix ashwagandha powder. Ashwagandha is called rasayana, or it's an adaptogen herb, especially for Vata dosha, to give nourishment. So after a cleanse, we'll bring in something like these restorative herbs, adaptogenic herbs to nourish. And oftentimes I'll have clients combine that with ghee or honey or that date almond shake that I mentioned.
Mm, sounds really good. I really do love a date shake with some nut butters. I've been doing that lately and they're delicious. So I'm curious, what are some other adaptogenic herbs that you would suggest that people have during this time?
Yeah, so during this time, so ashwagandha is warming and it can be a little heavy. So if a person has more vata and sometimes some pitta, if there's some pitta, that's okay. Although if they have a lot of heat, then another adaptogen may be more indicated for them. I really like rhodiola a lot. Rhodiola is in the rose family. It's wonderful for pitta. It's really nice for all three doshas. So I like to include rhodiola. I like to include licorice this time of the year. One of my favorite adaptogens, it's not in season now, but it's helpful in this season, is Tulsi, the holy basil, because it has an affinity toward the respiratory system, toward the heart. It brings contentment, but it also just supports our vitality. So I love Tulsi. And for women looking to balance hormones, one of my favorite adaptogens is Shatavari. And Shatavari is cooling and it's kind of heavy as well. I don't recommend it during a cleanse, but on the other side of a cleanse, Shatavari can be a really nice adaptogen herb to consider for women wanting to strengthen their vitality or support breastfeeding, support fertility, or just balance hormones during perimenopause. Men can also enjoy Shatavari. Oftentimes, that would look like an herbal formula that's included in. But usually, the lighter adaptogens like the rhodiolas and the tulsi and licorice, those kind of herbs I love this time of the year.
That's so great. Shatavari is so awesome. She's known as she with 100 husbands. Is that right? Or 1,000 husbands or something like that?
Yes, she who can have 100 husbands.
Yeah. So good for balancing our hormones and really great postpartum.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really wonderful herb to know about. It actually tastes pretty good too. You can mix it with warm milk or nut milk and drink it. And yeah, it's very replenishing.
Mm, that's so great. So we're coming up on time here. So if someone is new to Ayurveda and wants to, start somewhere and wants to start a spring detox, what is just the steps you think they should take to do this? Do you think that they need a practitioner? Do you think that they could maybe follow an online program? Or is there some simple things, maybe out of affordability, maybe they can't afford to be engaged in a program? Is there something they can do more than what we just talked about today?
Yeah, so my teacher, Dr. Ladd, has a lot of wonderful books available. One of his books is called The Complete Guide to Ayurvedic Home Remedies. And in this book, he outlines a brief home cleanse, like how you can do a cleanse yourself at home. He covers a lot of herbs and yoga poses and kitchen remedies for common ailments. It's just a really nice resource to have on your bookshelf to help your family. But in that book, he gives an outline for a spring cleanse. And so you could look at that. I mean, really, the first place to start with a cleanse is before you add things in to consider what you can take out. For example, for the next 7 days, I'm going to avoid all processed foods. If it comes out of a bag, a box, a can, I'm not going to consume it for 7 days. I'm only going to consume whole, freshly prepared seasonal foods. So just doing that and upping your tea intake, for example, is a pretty effective cleanse by just taking things out. So sometimes that can be a nice way to think about it. Like before structuring a whole cleanse, like what can I take out of my lifestyle? Maybe I'll take a week or two off of coffee and alcohol and sugar, see how I feel. And then, bring in the herbal cleansing teas. One tea we love in Ayurveda, it's called cumin, coriander, fennel tea. So you take equal parts of cumin, coriander, and fennel seeds and steep them in hot water and drink that throughout the day. And so this tea supports your agni, your digestive fire, without overstimulating it. It cleanses the gut. It gives you energy. It's really helpful during a cleanse, but also just at any time. But this time of the year, I love the CCF tea.
CCFT. This is amazing because my mom literally told me maybe 2 days ago that she had this tea. She was inspired. She saw something online and she was inspired to drink this tea. So she was telling me about it. I was like, I wonder what she saw. But I love hearing that this is really great for this time of year too, because it feels like it was aligned for her.
I love the timing of that.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So the CCF tea, and then another herbal formula to consider if you just want to bring some light cleansing effects into your body is called Triphala. Triphala is a formula that includes 3 fruits, 3 dried fruits, one for each of the doshas. And so you can take Triphala powder or Triphala in capsule. Either way is fine. Typically in Ayurveda, we recommend tasting the herbs, putting it in your mouth so you taste it and get that effect. So for the average person looking to maintain health, it would be a half teaspoon Triphala powder and a half cup of warm water. And usually taking that before bed or first thing in the morning, but evening time is best because that'll help to cleanse and detoxify your gut while you sleep. And so Triphala can actually be taken throughout the year. But if you've never taken it before and you're wanting some gentle cleansing practices, Triphala and CCFT are 2 nice things just to bring in really simply to get some good results.
Amazing. I'm super inspired. My friend gave me a pack of powdered triphala after your class, maybe because we both went to it. And so I have that in my herbal apothecary and I'm going to have it tonight.
Okay, amazing. So there aren't a lot of contraindications for Triphala, except if a woman is breastfeeding and is newly breastfeeding, like if the baby's over 1 year, then she can maybe bring in a little Triphala. What it can do is it can soften the stool of the baby. So that's just one thing to think about is oftentimes for new mothers, we wait on a cleanse until breastfeeding is complete because toxins can start to circulate in her blood and impact the breast milk and impact the baby. So I just wanted to point that out that a lot of these things we're talking about are more helpful after breastfeeding is complete.
Okay, that's good to know because I am still breastfeeding and my daughter's 21 months, so she's almost 2 now. So you said maybe a little bit, but not like full on.
Yeah, at her age, it may not impact her as much. And so just a small bit of triphala may be okay. Whenever someone's wanting to cleanse their intestines while they're breastfeeding or even while pregnant, so instead of triphala or any kind of purgative, we recommend a hot cup of milk or like a hemp milk or oat milk, hot milk with a big spoon of ghee. So you melt the ghee in the milk and drink that before bed, and that will soften the stool and help with constipation and just keeping the body soft and supple. So really great remedy for pregnancy constipation or postpartum constipation or just wanting to keep things supple in the tissues. Before we bring in Triphala, we'll recommend something like that.
Thank you for that. It sounds delicious too, because I do love putting ghee in my hot drinks with raw milk and all sorts of other yummy things.
Yeah, what's nice to add to that is a little saffron and cardamom and maybe a little honey.
That sounds delicious. Thank you for that suggestion. I'm having so many light bulb moments as you're talking of things to incorporate into my life. And I know you said before you incorporate, think about what you can remove. And yeah, I'm really inspired to remove refined sugar. We don't eat a lot of sugar at all, but there's like an occasion where sometimes I will use brown sugar in like a recipe. And I am now really motivated to step away from all of that and just use alternative sugars because there's like, maple syrup does great. I make a lot of treats with those. Honey always is a great substitute. And they've got great sugars now where, date sugar is a thing and it can be a 1-to-1 swap, coconut sugar, and it has less of the bad implications or the not as healthful implications as other sugars. So thank you.
Yes, those are all really good choices. And one that I enjoy including in different preparations or baked items is jaggery. So jaggery is more of an Indian kind of sugar, but all it is sugar cane juice that's been dried and nothing's taken out. So it's the whole sugar. And it's available now even in granule or like powdered form. It used to only be available in big blocks, but you can find it in Indian grocery stores where it's powdered. Just make sure it doesn't have additives in it. But that's actually really tasty in hot beverages or when you're making treats at home. It gives a little bit richer taste because it has all the minerals and nutrients in it still.
That's great. That's a good idea. I've never heard of that. And you said you can go to an Indian store and buy that, or is there a place online that you could buy that, or how do you obtain that?
I typically will go to the Indian grocery stores in Bellevue here in Washington. And I know there are more Indian grocery stores available. I'm sure you can find it online. I just enjoy going into those grocery stores because there's
Yeah.
so many fun ingredients, to try.
Yeah, I wish I had something like that closer, but when I go to Bellevue, I am now feeling inspired to go check it out.
Yes, have fun with that.
Thank you. All right. So we're at time here. I'm just thanking you so much for your wealth of wisdom. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you and hear from you. I'm feeling really inspired by this conversation, and I hope others do too as well. I feel like they no doubt will, especially if they're curious about health and just holistic healing in general. Now, where can listeners find more about your work and connect with you?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I'm located on Bainbridge Island, and I see clients in person and also virtually on Zoom for Ayurvedic consultations. And so you can learn more about that on my website, which is embrace-ayurveda.com. And pretty much everything I offer is there. The spring cleanse I'm leading is not on my website right now, but that is happening in May. And I'm doing that through the Dye Olive Center here on Bainbridge. And listeners are welcome to reach out to me with questions or even to set up a call to find out which Ayurvedic service would be most indicated for them right now.
Great. And I will link everything in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Amber. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for walking this path of holistic wellness and mindful living with me. I hope today's discussion planted seeds in the hearts of those that need it most and has inspired you in some way. If you found value in our conversation, please consider subscribing to the Sacred Right podcast and leaving a review. It really helps this podcast reach more listeners, and I would be so grateful. I would love to connect over social media. My Instagram handle is @sacred.right. There you can stay up to date on upcoming episodes, current offerings, and small batch releases of our handmade botanical remedies. I will leave any relevant links from today's episode in the show notes. The music in this podcast is from an incredible musician and a dear sister of mine, Satori Key. Be sure to check out her music on all major platforms. Her medicine music is transformative and deeply healing and has truly changed my life. Tune in next time. Until then, nurture your body and soul, and remember, it's your sacred right.